The radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show. On this Tuesday, March 4th, the day the tariffs went into effect. All I can say is, God, I told you. I told you. Nobody listens to me. Nobody follows my advice. Yeah, this is what happens. What can we do, right? I mean, didn't I tell you once that biggest frustration I have in life is that I actually know how to fix the world and nobody will listen to me. Donald Trump, we'll talk about Trump's tariffs. We'll talk about Trump's Ukraine. We'll talk about the EU's attempt to respond. We'll talk about Vance's response to the EU, which is kind of tragic, funny. We'll talk about Iran and Trump and Putin. Who knew? All predictable. We'll talk about the Gaza reconstruction plan that the Arab nations are coming up with. We'll talk about the federal budget and how that is going. RFK is suddenly pro-vax. Who knew? And finally, we'll talk about the challenges Republicans are facing when they go home and they actually do town halls with constituents and what their solution is to that. All right. So a lot of topics. But don't worry, everything's faking. Trump is not abandoning Ukraine, and he's not raising tariffs, and he's not a friend of Putin. And this is all, what is it, 7D chess? Because I think we're beyond 4D chess. I think we've gone beyond 4D chess. So it's 7D chess. Yeah, that's where we are. All right. So we'll be talking about that. Reminder, you can ask questions. You can dictate the direction of the show, ask questions about anything you want, stuff we covered on the show, stuff we didn't cover on the show, philosophical stuff, ethical stuff, life stuff, economic stuff, political stuff, whatever you want. The floor is yours. We have a goal, $250 for each hour that the show is on. We've already into our second hour, already raised enough for the first hour. So thank you to John, who came in with $250, and that kind of covered the first hour. And he says, would you watch Karl Jobst's 40-minute expose, the Elon Musk Cheating Scandal? It covers his video game controversy and gives more context on the kind of guy Elon is. Yes, I will watch that. I did follow the cheating scandal a little bit, so I know a little bit about that, and I'll check out the video on YouTube and do that. It's yeah, I mean, he cheated, and he admitted to cheating at the end of it. So it's not even in controversy, and you wonder why the richest man in the world is cheating in terms of his score on a video game. We need a psychologist. I mean, particularly with this administration, we need a psychologist's perspective on the various narcissists who are involved in this administration and what is going on right now. It's it's pretty nutty. Milko says you're on for president. Yeah, anytime you want to just appoint me, I'm available. I'm not going anywhere. Ain't happening though. All right, let's start. I mean, as I think everybody knows by this point, because it's everywhere, President Trump's 25% tariffs on goods from Mexico and Canada, as well as an extra 10% tariff on China. So that brings it up to 20% tariff on China. Went into effect at midnight, Tuesday, 12:01 a.m. Stocks had already fallen on Monday when it was clear that the tariffs were actually going to go ahead. Stocks continue, last I looked at least, to fall today as the tariff actually go into effect, and people realize the economic consequence, the economic price of this. I don't know. NASDAQ is now up somehow, so stocks seem to be recovering in the from the more significant fall in this morning. Even Bitcoin has recovered from another fall that it was going through earlier today. So hard to tell exactly, what is driving all this on a day-to-day basis. Who knows? Maybe they're hoping that Trump will change his mind. But I think it's too late for Trump to change his mind, particularly given that Canada has, we'll talk about more about the Canadian retaliatory tariffs. Mexico is not in a hurry to retaliate, which is interesting. Mexico being more rational than other countries is kind of interesting. As I've said many times, it doesn't make any sense to retaliate. You basically are just kneecapping yourself even more. So yeah, you're already being hurt by the tariffs, and now you're going to hurt yourself even more by increasing tariffs, increasing taxes on your own people. So it just doesn't make any sense. But Canada is definitely retaliating with tariffs, significant tariffs. China has announced retaliatory tariffs on U.S. food and agricultural products, 15% on agricultural goods, and they've actually banned the export of some defense companies as well. So, Beijing is increasing. They keep kind of opening the door to negotiations. I think the Chinese really think that they can still negotiate with Trump, and they probably can. He is the deal maker after all. So they're still waiting for kind of what the issue will be, and they don't want to retaliate too hard because they want to leave room open for negotiation. Plus, I think they also realize that the more they retaliate, the more they hurt their own economy. You're seeing more and more MAGA come out and say, yeah, we're probably heading towards a recession. But now the latest story is, no, a recession is good. It'll allow us to, clear out all the Biden gunk, and we'll be able to start fresh with Trump's priorities. I've seen somebody's tweeted Biden's economy was artificially popped up by fake money and fake data. So now they're going to get rid of all that and they're going to, start afresh. Now, I have some sympathy to that. Recessions are good when they're caused by, like, for example, if it were true that MAGA was cutting government spending dramatically and that somehow caused a recession, the government spending cuts, which in the short run it might, yeah, that would be a good recession. And then we come out of it. But a recession because of tariffs is a very, very bad recession you don't really fully recover from because, it's going to be very difficult to recover. You have to undo the tariffs to recover from it fully. And what you do, the economy, if you don't cut tariffs, if the economy starts ticking up again, it's a distorted, perverted economy, inefficient, expensive, and never going to be as good as an economy without tariffs. So it just, nothing good can come of this. Nothing good can come of this. So here's the thing. You've got people in the administration that basically have told stories about tariffs that basically tell us the reason for tariffs. And different people in the administration seem to have different excuses, if you will, for tariffs. So you've got a group of Trump advisors who say it's really just leverage for negotiation. We don't really want tariffs. We certainly don't want tariffs long term. The tariffs are there short term, so we can sit down with these leaders of these different countries and negotiate better deals and negotiate reductions in fentanyl importation or negotiate something. They're never clear exactly what. The ones who are lean towards free market types will say, we want to use these tariffs to negotiate with other countries so that they reduce their trade barriers so that we can have real free trade in the future. Now, that's a minority within the people who want to negotiate, but okay, so you got one group, it's leverage for negotiation. Then you got another group that basically say, no, we're going to make a lot of money off of tariffs. We're going to have huge amounts of tax revenue. The tax revenue is not even going to be paid by Americans. It's going to be paid by the foreigners. And it's a way to, I don't know, replace the income tax, to get rid of the IRS. It's a way to go back to McKinley's economy, where we have the government is funded through tariffs instead of through income taxes. So that's group number two. And then you have group number three, that it's just a protection. We want all these goods to be produced in the U.S. So we actually want tariffs. We like tariffs. We want tariffs to be here forever. And the real goal of tariffs is not so much revenue, although that's good, and it's not leverage because we're not negotiating. Ultimately, it's bring manufacturing home, bring manufacturing to the United States. We should be producing all the stuff that we buy from Canada and Mexico and China. We just should be producing in the United States. I mean, this is the ultimate mercantilist argument that they have. And of course, a lot of this, you've got a fourth, which is Trump, which has something to do with trade deficits, and trade deficits are bad, and we shouldn't have trade deficits, and tariffs will reduce trade deficits, and that'll be good because we won't have a trade deficit. Why do you not like trade deficits? No answer, but that's kind of a Trump, the Trump story since the 1980s, since we had trade deficits with Japan. He's been on that one. So you've got these three plus Trump's fourth one. And part of the problem with this is Trump is constantly shifting between them. One day it's negotiation. Another day we're going to get rid of the IRS because we're going to have so much revenue from tariffs. Another day it's going to be, no, we want to bring all the industries home. And another day it's, no, trade deficits, they're evil, they're bad, we're subsidizing these other countries. And, they're all, he's bouncing around between them. And in some sense, these advisors don't know what they should be advocating for because they don't know what the boss wants. So what we actually get is people advocating for all three without really telling us everything. So, for example, right now, this idea we'll go into recession, and then we'll reshore, all these industries will come home, will come to the United States, and that reshoring will create massive economic activity. I'm not sure where the employees are going to come from, but that's a different question. We'll talk about immigration some other day. Reshoring all these industries, and then that is what will drive us out of a recession or something like that, right? So you've got all these different stories they come up with. Now, of course, all these three, they all are contradicting each other, and they can't all happen, right? You're either using it for leverage or using it for revenue or using it to onshore. But it's also true that the idea that you're using it for revenue and using it for onshoring are contradictory, because if you're using it for onshoring, that means we won't be importing stuff, and that means that there won't be any revenue because tariffs are only collected if Americans buy goods from outside the country. So to the extent that goods are not coming into the country because all the goods are being created in the country, then you don't have any revenue from tariffs. And to the extent that you've got revenue from tariffs, you're not onshoring. So all of these things are all contradictory. They don't all work. They each, the success of one is to the detriment of the other. And This is funny. Here's a Trump zombie syndrome. This is good. Edward says, TSMC is going to be making microchips on the United States soil because of the tariffs. Isn't that curious? Because TSMC is already making microchips on U.S. soil, and that was because of the CHIP Act, which Biden passed. And I don't remember Edward being excited about the CHIP Act and cheering on Biden getting TSMC to actually open up a factory in Arizona. They're actually manufacturing chips right now in Arizona because of Biden's CHIP Act. So maybe that's why they're coming to the United States, is because the CHIP Act subsidizes it. So, yeah, I mean, Trump is doing it, so it's good. When Biden was doing it, it was bad. So nobody knows why we have tariffs, in other words. 3 goals, none of them consistent with the other. But, all ultimately inconsistent with reality. But, one thing is clear, that if Trump is going to use these for negotiating, then it's, over time, because a lot of people thought that yesterday, like last time, he would get on the phone with Trudeau and I forget her name, in Mexico, and negotiate something and get something from them, and then cancel the tariffs. But no, the tariffs have gone into effect. The bureaucracy of the tariffs are now in place, and we are now, cost of goods from Canada and Mexico and China has just gone up. You will now be paying more for those goods. That's not inflation, by the way, because that's just relative prices going up. Other prices will probably come down, or other goods will go out of existence. You don't have any more money to spend. That's inflation. Inflation is when you have more money to spend, and therefore you drive up the prices. This is if you will, a supply shock. It's not inflation, but it is rising prices of certain goods. So certain goods are going to see significant price go up, and it's not going to be necessarily the obvious thing. So steel tariffs will go into place in 2 weeks. Steel prices are already much higher. I've already told you that. And as a consequence, all the things made from steel that U.S. producers use are now more expensive. And if they then export those things, exports will go down, because the United States will become less competitive when they try to export things. So there's no silver lining here. There's literally nothing good about this. Nothing good. Zero, zilch. Yeah. A lot of companies, by the way, will announce that they're going to make investments in the United States. Absolutely. Everybody. Announcements cost exactly zero. Sucking up to Trump, as Zelensky learned. If you don't suck up to Trump, you're in trouble. So you might as well suck up to Trump by making an announcement. So yeah, there'll be a lot of announcements. You can expect that. How many actual factories, how many actual jobs will be created? Negative. These tariffs, without any doubt, are going to be negative, just like last time. Remember, I told you 10,000 jobs were created because of Trump's steel tariffs in his first term, and 75,000 were destroyed. See ya. Some companies will invest in the United States because of the tariffs, yeah. And many, many, many more jobs than that will be destroyed in the United States. And many, many, many more dollars of investment will be destroyed in the United States. And the net will always, just simple economics, will always be negative. So an America First strategy is a strategy that increases employment in the United States. America First strategy is a strategy that makes Americans wealthier and more prosperous. Tariffs will make Americans poorer. Tariffs will destroy more jobs than they create. Tariffs will destroy more investment than is added. Wall Street Journal called tariffs dumb. Wall Street Journal was being very generous. I mean, remember, Wall Street Journal is trying to be nice to Donald Trump. Everybody knows what happens when you're not nice to Donald Trump. Just ask Zelensky. So everybody's trying to be nice to Donald Trump, so they call it dumb. It's a lot worse than dumb. It's a lot worse than dumb. Dumb is mild. Here's one way to think about tariffs. This is from a J.P. Morgan, from J.P. Morgan. Quote, "The trouble with tariffs, to be succinct, is that they raise prices, slow economic growth, cut profits, increase unemployment, worsen inequality, diminish productivity, and increase global tensions. Other than that, they're fine." That's J.P. Morgan. I think that's absolutely right. They do all those things. I don't like the term worsen inequality because I don't think that's relevant, but everything else is true. They raise prices, slow economic growth, cut profits, increase unemployment. Well, they cut profits for some. They increase profits to the undeserving. They diminish productivity, and they certainly increase global tensions. There's just no upside to tariffs. It's not an issue of how they're implemented. It's like gravity. Gravity exists. It's just there. You can't deny it. You can't reject it. Tariffs being bad is a law of economics. It's not a matter of implementation. It's not a matter of this time it'll work differently. It just is a disaster and will continue to be a disaster. Yes, I like that. I like that short, succinct one. You know when the last time Canada did big retaliatory tariffs against the United States? Last time that was after Smoot-Hawley. The result, trade collapsed. Tariffs, the United States plus Canada, explain about half the economic contraction from 1929 to 1934. Half. That's big. That's big. I'm not saying we're heading towards a Great Depression, but last time we had these kind of tariffs and we had a global tariff war in a major way, particularly with our friendly neighbors. Last time this happened, we got to get to Great Depression. As I said, the Chinese Minister of Finance has announced tariffs on imported U.S. goods starting on March 10th. They announced 50% on chicken, wheat, corn, and cotton imported from the United States. I'm not sure the United States is exporting a lot of chicken right now, given bird flu, but I don't know. 10% tariffs on sorghum. I don't even know what that is. Does anybody know what sorghum is? C-O-R-G-H-U-M. Soybeans, pork, beef, aquatic products, fruits, vegetables, and dairy product imports. The tariffs are, again, also target U.S., these is in addition to the tariffs that target U.S. energy exports and agricultural machinery, like Caterpillar, that were passed earlier by the Chinese. Now, notice, last time this happened, when Trump was president, China had these tariffs on agricultural product, and the response to that was massive new government subsidies of agriculture in the United States. So not only did we get tariffs and we got a higher cost of living, and then the government turned around and subsidized agriculture on top of that. So whatever money tariffs generated in tax revenue was spent on subsidizing American farmers, as if we don't subsidize American farmers enough already. Just to give you a sense of the difference between these tariffs and the ones that Trump passed last time. In his first term, tariffs affected $380 billion of imports, mainly from China, over the course of 2 years, 2018 and 2019. So over 2 whole years of him implementing tariffs, $380 billion of imports were affected mostly from China. This term, Tariffs already, as of today, affect $1.4 trillion of imports, mainly from our allies, and he's done that in 1 month. So this is nothing like what happened in his first term. Much more dramatic, and much more destructive and much more devastating in every kind of way. A part of Canada's retaliation is actually being done by the provinces. So, for example, the Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford, who just got re-elected Premier of Ontario, has announced a two-phase plan of retaliation for the recent U.S. tariffs. Phase 1 will include the removal of American liquor and other goods from stores within Ontario and an end to public contracts with U.S.-based companies, including Starlink. Phase 2 of the plan will involve 25% export tax on Canadian electricity used to power over 1.5 million homes across Minnesota, Michigan, and New York, as well as possible taxes and restrictions placed on rare earth minerals exported to the United States. Not to worry, Trump is going to get all the rare earth minerals he needs from Zelensky, right? So, in other words, electricity prices for people who get electricity from Ontario are going to go up 25%. 25%. And yeah, Minnesota, Michigan, New York, you're going to be affected. In addition, Ford has threatened, we'll see if he does this one, to totally cut off energy exports from one of Ontario's nuclear power plants, which provides electricity to several Northern American states, if Trump decides to increase tariffs on Canada. Trump is already today talking about, because there's a Canadian retaliation, of increasing tariffs on Canada even more. That is engaging in full-on, full-blown-out trade war with Canada. So, yeah. We have a full-on engaged trade war with Canada, and hard to tell where this ends, when it ends, where it ends, how it ends, what the price that everybody ultimately pays for how it all plays out. But it actually looks pretty bad. It looks pretty bad. All I can do is laugh because it's so ridiculous. I mean, this is so stupid. It's so dumb. It's so irrational and immoral. And look, being irrational is immoral. In objectivism, morality means being rational. And if you're not being rational, you're being immoral. Evil is the irrational. The immoral is the irrational. What the Trump administration here is doing is immoral. It's insane. Now, Jennifer's upset because Jennifer works, if I can say, works for one of the auto companies. And auto companies are now going to face just insanity. By some measures, some of the parts that go into automobiles cross the US-Canadian border 7 times before they're installed in a final product, before the final product is composed. They will have to be documented, tariffed 7 times, both ways, because Canada is imposing tariffs on those auto parts as well. What is that going to do to the cost? What is that going to do to the profitability of auto companies? And what's that going to do to employment in these auto companies? I mean, this is unthinking, irrational, moronic. And again, there is no steel manning this. I tried, right? David, I think last time, or last week, asked me to steel man tariffs. There's no steel manning tariffs. There literally is no way to make an argument for tariffs that is even semi-rational. And what's shocking but not surprising, because this is what we've observed over the last 8-9 years, is that people who should know better, but that have joined the Trump bandwagon, that have become Trump zombies, are just buying into this. They're buying into this. Now, it is true that there's a lot of opposition to these tariffs online. There are a lot of people really arguing about this. But the Trump guys, some of them represented on my chat, some of them, but many of them out there in the world, mindless. This is economics that they know. And this includes, by the way, some of his better appointments. That is, does Bessent, our Treasury Secretary, does he think these tariffs make sense? I know he doesn't. He's one of the guys who thought this was only for negotiations. I know he's anti-tariffs. I know he understands the economics of it. But what's he going to do, resign? What's he going to do? Publicly disagree with Trump? I mean, again, you saw what happens to Zelensky. I know that at least a third of Republican senators and at least a quarter of Republican House members know enough economics to know, and maybe even much more than this, know this is wrong. And this makes no sense, that this is economic suicide. It's unnecessary. It's unneeded. It's just suicide. You're shooting yourself in the knees, in the hip, in the abdomen for no reason. There's no upside. There's no benefit except Trump's ego. He promised. And, this idea that other people do tariffs, so we have to do tariffs. Again, other people criminally violate the rights of their own citizens, raise the cost of doing business in their own countries, hurt their own local industries. So we should do the same to ours. They shoot themselves in the knee, so we should shoot ourselves in both knees. It is such a unsubstantiated argument. It is such a bad economic argument. I mean, again, Adam Smith explained why this is wrong 250 years ago in The Wealth of Nations. This is not some, Austrian economic marginal question about the benefits of tariffs and trade and in global setting and what happens when the other countries subsidize or when the other countries have tariffs themselves. These are not new questions. These are not like, ooh, wow, Trump has come up with something that nobody ever thought of before. Trade economists have been thinking about this. Again, it's one of the few issues that there's kind of unanimity in the economics profession, and everybody gets it. Everybody understands. No. Even if the other party is subsidizing and tariffing, it doesn't make sense for you to do it. And we're actually even more understanding than Adam Smith, because Adam Smith was wrong on certain aspects of trade. Today we understand it even better. And it's not like we don't know what happens when you have tariffs. We've tried it. We've done it. Smoot-Hawley was a great example. Now, one of the shocking things about this, and this has more to do with politics than economics, is that Congress can end this right now. Within a day, they can end this. I mean, the reality is that what Trump's doing is unconstitutional. Because he doesn't have authority over taxes. Congress does. Now, Congress has delegated the power to the president, but I'm not convinced that that is constitutional. Congress can't just shrug off its responsibility and just hand it to the president. And even then, Trump is stretching his authority to its limit. The president does not have authority over trade policy. He does not. Congress does. Congress has to approve treaties, it has to approve trade deals, and ultimately it has to approve tariffs. Article 1 of the U.S. Constitution lays it out pretty clearly. So we could stop this by Congress going into session today, taking back the responsibility of tariffs unto itself, withdrawing the delegation of power to the president, which again, I think the court should look at. You can't just delegate your own responsibilities. Now, I'm curious what the Supreme Court would do if a case around the tariffs came to them around this question about, can Congress just delegate this away? So Congress can solve this. Will it solve it? That's a funny question because we all know the answer to that. We all know the answer to that, right? Yeah, it's the whole thing is just so distasteful and so shocking. It illustrates really, really well the degree to which we have a government, an executive branch that is dysfunctional economically, ignorant. Again, is a compliment. Ignorant is mild in terms of what they are in terms of economics. But then we have a political system that's dysfunctional, where Congress, on two big issues, which they have constitutional authority over, trade and immigration, have basically delegated powers to the executive that they should have never done, that it did not belong there, and which the court should indeed, absolutely should reverse and bring back to the legislature. At least the legislature can't do things on a whim. They can't just declare, oh, tomorrow there's 25% tariffs. There has to be discussion and a bill and there has to be language and people can lobby and people can disagree and the committees and it's slow, it's cumbersome, it's frustrating. Yeah, that's what the founders wanted. Passing laws should be slow, thoughtful, maybe, and not done on a whim. And maybe then you have a chance of stopping it. Now, not necessarily. Maybe Congress passes the same tariffs. I don't know. But at least it's not on the whim of one man, one crazy man who doesn't have any idea on what America First requires, what America First demands, and who has no idea, literally no idea, about how economy works. Now, there's a sense in which I think, and there's a sense in which I feel like, good. I'm glad he's doing this. This is good. Because you guys, right? You guys deserve it. Not any specific you guys, but America deserves it. People elected this guy twice. He told you exactly what he was going to do. He's doing it. He told you he was in the pocket of Putin. He told you he didn't understand economics and that he viewed trade as a lose-lose proposition or a lose-win proposition where America is always the loser. He told you he's going to do tariffs. He told you he's going to side with Putin. He told you these things. He didn't hide them. And here's a president who refused to acknowledge his defeat in 2020, who sent the mob to try to reverse the result. So he told you he doesn't respect the Constitution or the vote or the American system of government. He told you that. And people still voted for him. So, yeah, bring it on. Bring on the recession. Bring on the bad economic times. Bring on the shrinking. Lots of business people don't understand economics. Running a business is not related to knowing economics. The two skills are not the same. I know really good business leaders who made a lot of money. You're socialists. Okay, by the way, just so you're aware, the Secretary of Agriculture, Brooke Rawlins, was, this is related to tariffs and everything else, related to economic ignorance and how little this administration cares about you. She was asked today about what to do about high egg prices, because egg prices are high, primarily because of bird flu, and it's only going to get worse because we can't import eggs, because we're now going to have tariffs, so the price is going to stay high. So she was asked, what should Americans do? And she said, get some chickens and raise them in your backyard. She said this on Fox News. All of you guys, get some chickens and raise them in the backyard. Now, here in Puerto Rico, chickens roam around the street, so I could go and catch some chickens. And I don't have a backyard though, but we could probably figure out how to do this. But yeah, let's go back to 1220. I like that. Let's go back to 1220. She's been watching Knowles. That's a solution. Hey, this is onshoring. Why should you rely on somebody growing chickens in Arkansas or in Texas or somewhere else when you can grow chickens in your own home? Indeed. Why are you buying an iPhone? You can build this yourself. Well, maybe not. All right, you can't really build an iPhone in your backyard. So it doesn't work on that. I don't know what their solution is. Buy local. And by local, I mean in your backyard. No respect for division of labor. No respect for the meaning of the win-win fundamental nature of trade, which is, in many respects, one of the fundamental principles of economics, is that trade is win-win. If you don't get that, how can you get anything in economics? How can you get anything in economics? All right, so that was one of the things that Donald Trump did yesterday to try to undermine the United States of America, its security, and its future. The second was that it was announced that as of today, literally as of this morning, the U.S. will pause all military aid to Kiev until President Trump, remember that whim of our president, determines that Ukrainian President Zelensky has kissed his ass enough. Well, that's not what the story says. It says Zelensky makes a good faith effort towards peace negotiations with Russia. So the United States is going to pause all military aid to Kiev until Zelensky surrenders. If he surrenders, then maybe Trump will give him a second chance. According to the White House official, quote, the president has been clear that he is focused on peace. We need our partners to be committed to that goal as well. We are pursuing and reviewing our aid to ensure that it is contributing to a solution. In other words, no military aid. Now, whether that includes intelligence aid, which is crucial to Ukraine, I don't know. But by all indications, whatever equipment was sitting in Poland and was being shuttled into Ukraine from Poland, those trucks have stopped. There's no more aid going in to Ukraine with American military equipment on it. The White House didn't announce what conditions the U.S. would use to resume military aid. And didn't announce anything beyond that. So, what kind of understanding? What part of Trump's ass does he have to kiss? None of that was described in the announcements. Zelensky's obviously scared, as he should be, right? I mean, this is aid that Ukraine has relied on and is dependent on. I think more than anything else, this affects their ability to defend their skies against drones and ballistic missiles and other missiles coming in from Russia. They rely on the United States to provide them with Patriot missiles and air defense systems. I think that is the main damage being done here. Much of the war is being engaged with drones, which Ukraine is making themselves. But in terms of long-range missiles and particularly air defense systems, this is where it's really going to help hurt Zelensky. So he's going to have a much harder time defending his civilian population. Here I wish Israel was supplying Zelensky with all the air defense systems he wants. That would be amazing. But Israel's too wimpy and too afraid of Russia to do that. Yeah, and of course, everybody's yelling, this is great because otherwise World War III. Remember that? World War III? World War III. No, the fact that we are demanding that Ukraine surrender is what will lead to World War III. If we're heading towards World War III, it's the lack of help for Ukraine which will lead us there, and I've described how that would happen many times. Anyway, Zelensky's panicked, so he wrote the following. He wrote this on Twitter, which is how world leaders speak to one another these days, because at least on Twitter, it's harder to yell at one another and to lose one's cool. Zelensky writes, I would like to reiterate Ukraine's commitment to peace. Peace is the word of the hour. Reminds me of Munich, 1938. None of us wants an endless war. Ukraine is ready to come to the negotiating table as soon as possible to bring lasting peace closer. Nobody wants peace more than the Ukrainians. My team and I stand ready to work under Donald Trump's strong leadership to get a peace that lasts. How many times did he mention the word peace? 1, 2, 4 times in that, 3 sentences. I mean, yeah, he's figured out what he needs to do. Peace, 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 peace. Just give Trump what he wants. I want peace. He continues, we are ready to work fast to end the war. And the first stages could be the release of prisoners and truce in the sky, a ban on missiles, long-range drones, bombs on energy and other civilian infrastructure, and truce in the sea immediately if Russia will do the same. Then we want to move very fast through all next stages and to work with the United States to agree on a strong final deal. Oh, we managed to get through a whole paragraph without mentioning the word peace. We do really value how much America has done to help Ukraine maintain its sovereignty and independence. And we remember the moment when things changed, when President Trump provided Ukraine with javelins. We are grateful for this. This is in 2018 or 19. Our meeting in Washington at the White House on Friday did not go the way it was supposed to be. It is regrettable that it happened this way. And notice he's not apologizing, and he's not taking responsibility for it. He's saying it didn't go the way it was supposed to be, and it's regrettable that it happened this way. It is time to make things right. We would like further cooperation and communication to be constructive. So let's use Twitter instead of meeting face-to-face. That's me adding. Regarding the agreement on minerals and security. Now notice he added security. The agreement was only on minerals. Ukraine is ready to sign it anytime and in any convenient format. They were ready to sign it last week. We see this agreement as a step towards greater security and solid security guarantees. Now remember, it's the security guarantees that totally caused Vance and Trump to flip out. And I truly hope it will work effectively. So Zelensky is sucking up to Trump here, but not really. He doesn't take responsibility for what happened in the Oval Office. Good for him. And he's not giving up on his demand for security guarantees. Good for him. So, this is how it is. This is where we are. Now, in the meantime, the Europeans, let me just find this one said. Oops, that needs to be closed. That's not that. We'll get to that in a minute. The Europeans have announced the potential for an $800 billion bond issuance, which would go to beefing up their own defense systems. The money would go to beefing up European defense. We'll see if that's something they actually pass, but that is the the EU would do it on behalf of the different countries, and then they would allocate it to different countries, I guess, to build up their defense systems. This would be, I guess, outside of NATO. This would be direct through the EU. A portion of that could be used to beef up Ukraine's defenses. That could be a backstop for the Americans cutting off the aid. So it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. Of course, Macron and Starmer, the French and the British, have said that they would be willing to participate in a peacekeeping in Ukraine. So the Europeans, we will see how much they end up actually, stepping forward, and whether they, to what extent, and whether it is possible for them to actually fill in even a little bit what the United States has now backed out and again, abandon an ally in the middle of a war. I mean, yeah, one of the worst things I think a president of the United States has done in a long, long, long time. I mean, you can imagine again, and I've said this over and over again, you can imagine a situation where the American president says, look, we're running huge deficits. We're trying to cut government spending. We can't afford to do this anymore. We can't afford to fund your war. There'll be no new funding. We're going to continue to supply what we promised, but don't expect any more from us whenever this round finishes, the next 4 months, 6 months is done. That's it. The United States is not funding, is not providing you with any more free equipment or weapons or anything like that. You phase it in, let the Ukrainians prep for this. But the idea that you wake up one morning and say, no more weapons to Ukraine, stop right now, is so disgraceful, so anti-American, so a violation of America's commitments. Of course, Congress has approved all this money to go to Ukraine. So this is, again, the President of the United States deciding not to allocate money that Congress has already approved, and a bill has been signed, and it's there. It's not within the executive's power. It shouldn't be to stop it. But this is one of the most disgraceful actions I can think of an American president ever doing, certainly in foreign policy. It is a disgrace. It's Trump. This is Trump. This is who Trump said he was. This is who I told you Trump was. And this is who Trump is. Now, as I said earlier, Macron and Starmer said that they would be willing to provide security guarantees by putting British and French peacekeeping troops on the ground in Ukraine. Well, J.D. Vance was asked about this. And J.D. Vance, in an interview on Fox News, said, quote, 20,000 troops from some random country that hasn't fought a war in 30 or 40 years basically is not going to make any difference. I mean, talk about disrespecting our allies. I mean, the British military is seething. These are British troops that fought side by side with the Americans in Afghanistan and in Iraq, as did the French, as did the Germans, as did the Dutch and the Danish. The Europeans have fielded troops in support of America post 9/11, when America invoked Article 5 of the NATO agreement. They served on America, they participated, they fought. Over 1,000 Europeans have died in those stupid wars in Afghanistan and Iraq side by side with Americans? And Vance goes on television and disses them as insignificant random country, haven't fought a war in 30, 40 years? I mean, I always knew Vance was a bad guy. I mean, bad, morally, political philosophy-wise, power-lusting bad. I didn't think he was dumb and stupid, because he's not. He's really bright in some way. But this is just despicable. Despicable. Who is he talking about if not France and England? Only offer on the table right now was from France and England. There's no other way to interpret this. And indeed, the British and the French interpret it exactly this way. And many British veterans are speaking up about this. It's, yeah. I mean, it's not enough that we betray an ally, that we violate our commitments, that we change our mind about them, but then we insult our supposedly best friends out there in the world. I mean, this administration is, if possible, worse than I expected. You remember Lech Walesa? Lech Walesa was an icon. I mean, he sat in jail in Poland when it was part of the Eastern Bloc, when he was communist. He led really the attempts to rid Poland of communism. He was the leader of Solidarity movement that stood up to the communists. I mean, one of the bravest politicians of the late 20th century, and ultimately was president of Poland when it was finally liberated from the communists. This is what Lech Walesa wrote in a letter, public letter, to Donald Trump. Your Excellency, Mr. President, we watched your conversation with President Zelensky with fear and distaste. It is insulting that you expect Ukraine to show gratitude to the U.S. material aid in its fight against Russia. Gratitude is owed to the heroic Ukrainian soldiers who have been shedding their blood for over 11 years to defend the free world's values and their homeland, attacked by Putin's Russia. How can the leader of a country symbolizing the free world fail to recognize this? The Oval Office atmosphere during your conversation reminded us of the negotiations by the security services and the communist courts. Back then, prosecutors told us they held all the power while we had none. They stripped us of our freedoms for refusing to cooperate or express gratitude for our oppression. We are shocked that President Zelensky was treated in a similar manner. History shows that when the United States distances itself from democratic values and its European allies, it's ultimately endangering itself. Without President Reagan and U.S. financial support, the Soviet Empire's collapse would not have been possible. Reagan called the USSR an evil empire and confronted it decisively. We won, and today his statue stands in Warsaw facing the U.S. Embassy. Mr. President, military and financial aid cannot be equated with the blood shed for Ukraine's independence and the freedom of Europe and the world. Human life is priceless. Gratitude is due to those who sacrificed their blood and freedom, something self-evident to us former political prisoners of the communist regime under the Soviet Union. We urge the United States to uphold the 1994 Budapest Memorandum, which established a direct obligation to defend Ukraine's borders in exchange for them giving up nuclear weapons. These guarantees are unconditional. No way do they suggest such aid is a mere economic transaction. Signed, Lech Walesa, former political prisoner, Solidarity leader, President of Poland. Yep, the Poles get it. Good for Lech Walesa. I think that's a powerful statement. Shame on America. Shame on Trump. Shame on J.D. Vance. Shame on those Americans that support this decision. Yep. I've said enough. Although I'm sure there'll be more. There'll be more to say. Yeah, as I said, $800 billion European fund was announced yesterday. We'll see if they actually follow through with this. And it's going to be interesting how they balance this with the fact that Europe is in deep economic trouble Just one more point relating to Ukraine, not directly, and that is Taiwan. Taiwan is watching. Taiwan is watching. You know, it is worried. It is worried. The defense secretary of Taiwan yesterday made comments that suggest that they are watching very closely what's going on, and they are going to have to become self-reliant as quickly as possible. He says, quote, facing the rapidly changing international situation and escalating threats from the enemy, China, we cannot rely on the goodwill of others to maintain peace. He's talking about Trump. He's talking about the United States. And I think it's not just Taipei. It's not just South Korea that is watching. China's obviously watching, but so is Japan, South Korea, the Philippines, maybe India, Australia. Anybody who might be an ally of the United States is watching how Trump sticks a knife in and twists. And the world is a different place today than it was just a few days ago. All right, quickly, you might be, really thrilled to know that the United States, i.e. Trump, has asked Vladimir Putin, the distinguished president of Russia, ally to the United States, to broker a deal with Iran. With Iran. So Russian President Vladimir Putin is going to help broker a nuclear deal with Iran. He's going to help the Americans. This is truly amazing. This is already being ongoing in terms of the United States and Russians talking about Iran. Started in February when Putin and Trump talked, and continued during their conversations in Saudi Arabia. And in the meantime, Russian missile experts have been visiting Iran with the idea of, I guess, replacing all their lost missiles, all the lost air defense systems that Israel knocked out. But yeah, as I told you, Trump was not going to wipe out the Iranian nuclear facilities. He was not going to attack Iran. He was going to negotiate a deal. Who knew, though, that his ally or his confidant in negotiating a deal with Iran was going to be his best friend, or maybe, by some accounts, his boss, Vladimir Putin. But you can all now, I think, rest assured and relax, and I think be confident now that Iran is taken care of because Putin's on the job, and we all know that Putin has the best interests of the United States at heart, and that he will do his uttermost best to represent the United States and cut a good deal so Israel and the United States can be safe. can be safe. What could go wrong? What could go wrong? So Iran nuclear deal in the cards any day now. Negotiations are happening right now behind the scenes. I've been telling you this for a month now, that Trump has been negotiating with Iran. Well, he is, and he's using Putin as an intermediary or as a partner in those negotiations, which again should make you feel really, really good about how they turn out. All right, Gaza. Let's talk a little bit about Gaza. So Trump's plan for Gaza, Gaza, the resort. People who actually have a stake in this are meeting right now in Egypt. That is, Arab countries are meeting in Egypt to finalize a plan for Gaza, their plan at least for Gaza. Egypt has drawn up a plan and it's presenting it to its Arab friends or not so friends. This includes the new dictator of Syria. It includes the Jordanians. It includes the United Arab Emirates and of course Saudi Arabia. The plan is a 5-year plan to rebuild Gaza. At the cost of $50+ billion that they will that will be raised by a committee of Arab countries, right? And it's a plan that will involve several stages. They've actually got worked out. There'll be an early recovery of 6 months, which will involve debris removal and temporary housing. Then there'll be a phase 1, which will take 2 years, which will include 200,000 housing units at the cost of $20 billion. And then a phase 2, which will be 2.5 years, of another 200,000 more units and a Gaza airport, which will involve $30 billion. They will form a committee to raise that money and to facilitate the rebuilding of Gaza. And there's some disagreement about who will run Gaza. The idea is initially it will be a committee of technocrats in Gaza, not Hamas. But Egypt does not foresee in its plan the disarmament of Hamas. Hamas will remain a force in Gaza. The Saudis seem to be insisting on disarming Hamas. The Egyptians do not want that. So there's some disagreement around there. Of course, nobody's asked the Israelis about this. And of course, who will rule Gaza long term? Everybody seems that this committee seems to think that it will be the Palestinian Authority, although Israel is very much against that. So there is a real effort going on right now in Saudi Arabia where all these leaders are meeting. In the meantime, the new leader of Syria, Ahmed al-Sharia, has made his opinion clear, and that is that the real threat in the Middle East is still Israel, but that Israel cannot be defeated by Hamas alone or Hezbollah alone, but Israel has to be confronted by a unified Arab world. Now, luckily for Israel, the Arab world is not unified. So there you have it. So yes, we will hear more about this plan. Today, I think, is the first day, or yesterday was the first day. We'll see if they come out in the end with some kind of document, which is a detailed plan. We'll see how the United States and others relate to this. Mahmoud Abbas, who is the leader of the Palestinian Authority, is in Saudi Arabia for this meeting. Again, it's going to be interesting to see what is going to be the resolution at the end of this, and how the United States deals with it. Because at the end of the day, if the Saudis back a deal, is Trump going to stand up to the Saudis? I think all evidence suggests that Trump is more loyal to the Saudis than he is to Israel. So we will see. A lot of complaining at this event about Israel and about Israel's violation of Syrian, the Syrian state. All right, back home to the United States. You remember the what do you call it? March 14th deadline. By March 14th, if we don't have some kind of continuing resolution or some kind of budget, there is a government shutdown. There will be a government shutdown. That is because the debt limit will be exceeded, and Congress has to authorize a raising of the debt limit. Right now, with 2 weeks to go, there is no deal on the table. There is no deal between Democrats and Republicans are split. There's real opposition within the Republican Party. Trump doesn't seem to really care, and seems to be ignoring Congress anyway, cutting government spending without even reference to Congress, without even asking Congress. And so right now, we're kind of at a stalemate, and we've got 14 days, a ticking time bomb. I mean, maybe Elon Musk's and Trump's strategy is to shut down the government. Now, I'm all for that. I like the idea of government shutdowns, particularly if they last longer than just a few hours or a few days. And maybe then we'll discover, maybe that'll be an opportunity for Elon Musk to fire even more government employees. But not having a budget, plays probably into Musk's hands. So it's going to be interesting to see how all this gets resolved. Remember, the Republicans have a very, very, very small margin in the House, and they have to get basically everybody voting, all the Republicans to vote with them on any resolution, and yet there's no agreement among Republicans with regard to spending. None. Zero, zilch. So we'll see over the next 2 weeks what actually happens. I did see numbers that suggest that the government actually spent more money in February than it did in January. So whatever Musk was doing didn't actually cut any spending. Now, you don't expect it to, because it takes savings from firing people a long time to actually manifest in the numbers. But just so you know, the deficit continues to grow. Government spending continues to to increase. There's no slowing down. There's no stopping of that yet. And maybe there's some effect long term, but at least in the immediate term, nothing has changed. RFK, this is kind of a funny story. Remember RFK, our anti-vax RFK? Well, anti-vax RFK yesterday published a op-ed. Where was the op-ed published? Yeah, I'm not sure where it was published. Anyway, or maybe it wasn't an op-ed. But anyway, yesterday, RFK basically announced that MMR vaccines are a vaccine that includes a measles vaccine. It's a compound vaccine that includes a measles vaccine. Should be used and are a huge benefit. And that, right now, the fact that people don't have the MMR vaccines is causing the measles outbreak in Texas, which is causing real angst, a lot of kids being sick, and at least one kid dying. He said, it's an op-ed on Fox News Digital. That's right. I knew it was op-ed. Fox News Digital on Sunday. The headline was, "Measles outbreak is call to action for us all." And the subhead was, this is unbelievable, "MMR vaccine is crucial to avoiding potential deadly disease." So RFK is folded under pressure from who knows whom. The anti-vax MAGA or MAHA is flipping out, like they're calling RFK just as bad as Fauci. He's just one more member of the old regime. RFK is already proven to be a fraud. So there's major stuff going on. One guy who served as Assistant Secretary of Public Affairs at the Health and Human Services posted that he was resigning. So who knows? Now, he resigned, I think, this guy resigned because RFK took so long to promote the vaccine. Anyway, who knew? Who knew? I still think RFK is going to do a lot of damage. So don't get your hopes up. Don't get too excited about this stuff. It's still going to be a lot of damage that RFK is going to do. God. Let's see. Yeah, the last item is it turns out that as Republicans are going home to their districts and holding town halls with their constituency, they're getting yelled at. People don't like what's going on. Trump promised to control price hikes. Prices are going up. Some prices, anyway. And there's huge economic uncertainty. And things are going bad. And they're not happy. And then a lot of government employees in their districts might be fired. And people are worried. And people don't know how they're going to make a living. And there's a lot of yelling going on. You've seen videos probably in town halls all over America. So it turns out not everybody who voted for Trump is part of the Trump cult, is part of the zombies. Some people are not happy. In response to that, GOP, House Republican leaders, have advised their congressmen not to go home. They've advised them to avoid in-person town hall meetings because they're going to get protests and a backlash. So they've advised them to hold digital meetings with constituency and minimize interactions. I mean, perfect. In other words, Congressman, we've just brought a large pile of sand, right outside the House of Representatives. You just go to the pile of sand, dig a little hole, and stick your head in it, and everything will be fine. Everything will be fine. Don't worry. Just as long as you stick your head in the sand, things will go very, very well. Okay, this is our last one. I can't help myself. Last comment on Ukraine. This is what Elon Musk tweeted yesterday evening. As distasteful as it is, Zelensky should be offered some kind of amnesty in a neutral country in exchange for a peaceful transition back to democracy in Ukraine. I mean, that makes my blood boil. It really does. The injustice of that statement. The injustice. Zelensky needs amnesty? Zelensky is the war criminal? Not Putin. Zelensky. It is just, I mean, here's one of the most courageous leaders, certainly of the 21st century, whose country was invaded, who stood up bravely against the invader. And Elon Musk is portraying him as a war criminal that needs amnesty somewhere? You couldn't make this up. I mean, politically, Elon is turning out to be worse than his boss. Worse than his boss. It really is disgusting. tragic because we're talking about Elon Musk. One of the great business leaders, I guess. Okay, one more quick story. Because we talked about this yesterday. Yesterday, we talked about the crypto reserve fund. And the crypto prices went through the roof. And then overnight, they all crashed. And they're back to where they were before the announcement was made. Weird. Very strange. I wonder if somebody made a lot of money, sold at the top, and let everything crash afterwards. Yeah, I unbelievable. You know how this crypto stuff, how that works. But you know, I've talked about the reserve fund and what a dumb idea that is yesterday. So, all right, that is the news for Tuesday, March 4th. Yep, sadly, no better than the news was for March 3rd, indeed, marginally worse. Dave Dean just came in with a $100 sticker. Thank you, Dave. Really, really appreciate that. You guys are being very generous today, and we're doing phenomenally well on the Super Chat. But those of you who would like to continue to ask questions, please do so. We're still $23 short of for a 3-hour goal, and I do suspect we will go into the third hour, given the number of questions you guys have, and we haven't even started. Stephen, thank you for the sticker as well. And I know there were some stickers early on, but they've, let's just go all the way to the top and see what was there. No stickers at the top. All right, so I think we got the stickers. Thank you, Dave, for the $100. And we've got a few $50 questions, and we'll go from there. John gave $250 for me to watch this expose on Elon Musk. Given my disappointment, my just overwhelming disappointment in Elon's political activism, I think this video that John wants me to watch will just intensify that disappointment. Let me remind you that we have two sponsors. One of them is Alex Epstein. Alex Epstein is the author of alexepstein.substack.com. Alex is the author of Fossil Future and the world expert on fossil fuels and environment, climate change, and energy policy more broadly. He's written recently about what it would take to save the grid. He has testified before Congress just last week. He testified before Congress on exactly that, on saving our grid. Alex is an unbelievable resource for all things related to energy. You will learn a huge amount, as much as you think you know, about energy challenges the United States faces, the energy market, fossil fuels, climate change, and everything else. So subscribe. Alex Epstein, Substack.com. Alex is a sponsor of the Yaron Brook Show, a friend of the Yaron Brook Show, often a guest on the Yaron Brook Show, and I'm sure we'll have him back sometime later in the spring. And subscribe. The Ayn Rand Institute is a sponsor of the show right now. Ayn Rand Institute is looking for students who are interested in scholarships for OCON. OCON is the Objectives Conferences. It'll be in Boston this summer between July 1st and 5th. If I remember, I'll be speaking there. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to celebrate going to celebrate 40 years to the Ayn Rand Institute. It's also going to be July 4th. So it's going to be a celebration of America, celebration of the Enlightenment. First of all, you should all come. And those of you who can't afford it, but who are serious students of objectivism, people who study objectivism, you should try to get a scholarship. And you can do that by going to aynrand.org/start here, aynrand.org/start here, and filling out a form, filling out a questionnaire, and applying for scholarships. So please apply for scholarships to OCON, and hopefully many of you are coming anyway, and that some of you will come with a scholarship to get you there. It is really, it's going to be a great conference. I'm really looking forward to it. And Boston, by the way, Boston in July is wonderful. It's hot, but it's just the history, and it's the history is fantastic. The atmosphere on 4th of July is always electric. The firework display is stunning. It's a great city to celebrate 4th of July in. Great city. All right. Also, quick reminder: if you'd like to support the Yaron Brook Show on a regular basis, just without thinking about it, without thinking about it on a monthly basis, just go to Patreon or PayPal, Yaron Brook Show, and sign up for a monthly subscription. You can do that $5, $10. With $10, by the way, or above, you get the podcast, the Yaron Brook podcast, in a podcast form in your podcast app with no commercials. But go there and sign up, and yeah, you can go all the way to $1,000 a month supporting the show, and it would be great. It would be great if we can get the numbers of Patreon supporters up significantly. I've got some goals for this year, and January, February, great. Let's make March just as good. At this pace, we'll meet the goal that I set. But yes, the Yaron Brook Show needs to generate revenue, and the reason it needs to generate revenue is because that's how this show runs. This show runs off of the revenue that you guys provided. It's a listener-supported show. Couldn't exist without you guys. All right, let's jump in. Let's start with $50 questions. The first one from Michael. Michael says, it seems like Elon Musk and Steve Bannon are acting like online trolls that have no power. And they actually have power. Throwing up Hitler salutes and posing childish nonsense. Maybe they're appealing to their base of powerful, resentful losers. Yeah, I definitely think they're appealing to a base of fearful, angry losers, which I definitely think is the base of the Trumpist party. There's no question about that. But it's also true that they are trolls, particularly Elon. It's not that Elon has a governing philosophy. Like one day, like last week on Joe Rogan's show, he'll say something true. Social Security is a Ponzi scheme. His solution, never heard anything. And what is the principle? And in what way should the principle, you could say a lot of what the government does is a Ponzi scheme. But what is the principle? How should we shrink government? What should the government spend money on? What shouldn't it spend money on? How do we do that? No principles, no guidelines, no political philosophy. So what's he left with? Emotion. Emotion is what animates all these guys. Emotion leads to memes, leads to the fun and the joy and the trolling. He still thinks, and I think Bannon still thinks that the enemy is the left. The enemy is leftists. However they define that is not clear. Europe, for example, is the enemy because they are the left. This is why the fundamental explanation for why this administration is so pro-Putin is Putin shares with them the animosity towards the left. And all of them, Putin and Musk and Bannon, think that Europe is the left. And therefore, Europe is the enemy. Putin is the ally. I also think that one of the problems with Musk is whether he's on drugs or whether this is just him, he doesn't stop. That is, he's still running 3 companies. He's running Doge. And he tweets every 15 minutes. So when you're doing that, there's no time to think. Remember thinking? There's no time to reflect. There's no time to figure stuff out. All you can do is emote, respond. Fast, quick. And in some places, your, if you will, fast thinking is accurate because you've been in business forever. In some areas, politics, for example, you don't know what you're doing and your fast thinking is just emotion. And it's just random. And you just pick up memes online. You just pick up stuff online and you retweet it and you like it and you support it, but you haven't thought about it. You haven't thought about it. You just put it out there. So yeah, I think Elon Musk is not thinking, is the bottom line. He's just not thinking. He's not using his conceptual faculty. He's emoting. And I think that explains a lot of it. Now, Bannon has an agenda. Bannon is playing to an audience. Bannon has particular goals. Bannon is the closest we have to an ideologue of fascism in America today. And he is motivated by certain goals and certain purposes. And to think Bannon hates the most, two things. One is capitalism, free markets, and two is individual liberties. Bannon hates individual freedom, and he hates capitalism, why he hates Ayn Rand, and has said so publicly. Yeah, so there's Michael's question. Somebody must be new to our program, and he says, not sure if it's derangement, but Brook does not like Trump for sure. That is like the understatement of the decade. Now, I don't think it's derangement because my deep, deep dislike of Donald Trump is explained rationally and has been justified now for over 9 years of thinking about it, following him, commenting on him, discussing him almost daily, certainly almost every week. It was justified in his first term. It was certainly justified on January 6th. And it's justified in his behavior since then. And it's certainly justified in his first 40 days in office. I really do think Trump is the least competent, least able, and this is saying a lot, president ever, given that Biden had Alzheimer's throughout his 4 years, and dementia. I don't know if it's Alzheimer's, dementia, and wasn't even cognition. In full cognition, the fact that Trump is worse than Biden says something. So yes, I think he's about as bad as it gets, and I've explained it all in great detail over 9 years. I started talking about Trump when he announced his run for the presidency in what is it, late 2015 or early 2016, whenever that was. David, also $50. Thank you, David. Niall Ferguson was on Sam Harris's podcast. That would be interesting. Defending Trump's better appointments like Burgum, Wright, and Bessent. But these so-called pros are supporting bad economic policy. Your thoughts? Well, my view is that, look, Burgum and Wright are basically quiet. They're basically doing their thing. For example, there was a big deregulation of producing lumber on government lands, making it much, much easier to go and chop down trees. That's Burgum. That's Burgum doing his job. He's the Interior Secretary, and he's going to deregulate, and he's going to ignore the stupidity of what's going on with Trump and just focus on the things he can do. And I think Wright is going to be the same. He's going to focus on energy and do a lot of really, really good things in energy, assuming Trump allows him to do it, and assuming he's not dealing with an emergency because of what Canadians shut down energy export to the United States. Who knows? Bessent has no excuse because Bessent is Treasury Secretary. Bessent is intimately involved in every economic decision that Trump makes. Bessent is involved in the tariffs and will have to, on television, in public, defend them. That's his job. He can't avoid it. So Bessent is clearly a sellout, completely. He thinks he's the adult in the room who can rein Trump in, and as he discovers that he can't, will he resign? Will he stay on? What will he actually do? I don't know. But I think Burgum and Wright As long as Trump doesn't shoot somebody in the middle of Fifth Avenue, will just put their head down and do their thing. And I think I get it. I wouldn't do it. I could never do it. The sanctioning of the Trump administration, I think, is wrong and bad, but I get that they don't have my perspective, and it makes sense for them. They will do a lot of good in their selected positions. Bessent is complete sellout and has to be, otherwise he can't keep his job. That's the nature of his job at this point. All right. Let's go. Those were the $50 questions. Let's turn to $20 questions. And we'll start with Remo. Is it rational to fall in love with Dominique like Roark did before she changed her character? In the beginning, she does not have the values you should fall in love with, right? No, not right at all. You don't fall in love with the philosophy the person holds explicitly. You fall in love with who the person is fundamentally. You fall in love with their character, and you fall in love with their implicit values, and you fall in love with a sense of life. I know people who fall in love with people who disagree with them quite a bit on philosophical issues. But they have a great sense of life, and they have a great character, in spite of those disagreements. Dominique is a great human being from the moment Roark meets her, and he knows it. He can see it. She's proud. She's rational. She is a valuer. She knows beauty. She knows goodness. She has made a bad decision about how to deal with her values. She's made a bad decision about how to live her life. And she's making real mistakes. But it doesn't change the fact that she is a valuer. She loves beauty. She loves those sculptures. She loves ability. That's why she loves Roark. And Roark sees that. And he sees her behavior in the middle as unfortunate, but not as a deal killer. He even tolerates her marrying Keating and marrying Wyatt and having sex with, that is not what's going to kill it for him, because he knows what the underlying essence of her character is. He knows what she is underneath this facade of hatred, this facade of wishing destruction, and so on. And that's what he falls in love with. And that's what he's waiting for her to discover, who she really is. He falls in love with a real Dominique. She has to figure out who that really is. And she does. And he's confident she will. That's part of what he admires about her character, is the knowledge that that will happen. David, can you explain the source of Trump's fear of trade deficits? Is it basing it on some valid, if misguided, economic theory? No. No, there just isn't anything to base it on. I don't know where it comes from. I think it comes from his general view, which I believe he has, that trade, even between people, is zero-sum, and that there are winners and losers in every transaction. He certainly, in the art of the deal and in the way he describes the way he ran his business, views it that way. He would try to screw his customers and screw his suppliers, try to get the upper hand on them, because if he didn't screw them, that they were screwing him. And he's always been like this. Like, he hated trade deficits with Japan in the 1980s. And the fact that Japan suffered as a consequence didn't change his mind. And the United States did well in the 90s and 2000s. Didn't change his mind. because it's a fundamental view of human nature. He is a zero, he's economically ignorant, completely. That's too generous. He's economically irrational. He's adopted irrational economics, which is a way of me condemning him morally, not just, not just that he's lazy or something. This is morally. He's adopted irrational economics. And he's adopted a view of the world that is, a win-lose view of the world. I think he's always had it. It's a kind of a gangster mentality. It's a New York mob boss mentality. I win, you lose. And if you win, it means I lost. So I better not let that happen. And he deals with, I think, ultimately everybody like that. And he's proud of it. He's proud of it. Right? He really is. I think I told you, a friend of mine who interviewed for a job as vice chairman of the Fed with Trump, first time around. And Trump told him a story about how he screwed a banker of his. This friend of mine is a banker friend of his. How he screwed him. And it wasn't like he was doing this in embarrassment. He was doing this with pride. Like, the fact that he screwed this banker meant that he won. And the only way to win is by somebody else losing. And this is where my friend said, I don't care what job he offers me. I'll never work for this guy. Never work for this guy. I mean, it is his world, in his mind, is zero sum. And it's all about money, not about stuff. So it's all about money. So the fact that we send our money overseas and get stuff in return, we're losing somehow. Even though, if you really think about it, stuff is always more valuable than money. Stuff lasts. Stuff is why we have money to begin with. We have money so we can get stuff. Again, there's some fundamental inability to think on his behalf, which is quite amazing. David also asks, please explain how trade deficit leads to current account surplus. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty straightforward, right? We buy stuff from Canadians. Canadians now have, they have dollars. And the Canadian we buy the stuff from takes his dollars and exchanges them in the bank, so the bank has dollars. But some people want dollars. And why do they want the dollars? So they go to the bank and exchange their Canadian money for the US dollars. And then they use those dollars for one of two things. They use those dollars either to buy American stuff, and some dollars that flow into Canada because we're buying stuff from Canada are used to buy stuff from Americans. Right? But there's a trade deficit. So it means that we're buying more stuff from Canada than they are buying from us. So what happens to the rest of the dollars? Well, the rest of the dollars are used by people who want to invest in America. And that's what a current account surplus is. Right? So they invest in America. Now, it's true, Americans also invest in Canada. But Canadians invest more in America than Americans invest in Canada. How do we know that? Because of the trade deficit. The trade deficit basically leaves more dollars in the hands of Canadians, and therefore they have to use those dollars, and they use those not to buy American stuff, but to invest in America. So it's a mathematical equation. Let's see, exports plus account surplus, current account surplus or deficit, equals imports. Those are the three things you can do with dollars, right? Imports, exports, investments. And again, a current account is the amount of money Americans invest in Canada with Canadian dollars and the amount of money Canadians invest in America with American dollars. So it's a mathematical equation, basically. Truism. Do trade deficits always lead to account surpluses? Yes. I mean, not country by country. So, okay, so let me just put it this way. Not country by country. So it is true that it's not necessarily the case that Canadians invest more in the US, because there's one other thing Canadians can do with their dollars. Canadians can use those dollars to buy oil from Saudi Arabia, because Saudis will take dollars. But then the Saudis have those dollars. And what are they going to do with those dollars? Well, some dollars they'll use to buy stuff from America, but the rest of the dollars they'll invest in. So as a total, if you look at the total trade deficit and you look at the total current account surplus, those have to all add up. It wouldn't be on a country by country basis. It would be cumulative across all countries. Does that make sense, David? So it has to be on a cumulative basis, not on a country by country basis. All right. I assume David got that. I don't see him saying anything in the chat, but I assume that makes sense. All right. Okay, somebody's got breaking news that Trump and Zelensky are going to sign the minerals agreement today. All right, so what was all the huff and puffing about? It just doesn't, yeah. Right, there's also breaking news that Germany is going to massively increase spending in defense and infrastructure. They're going to suspend the debt limit law that they have in order to do this. The exact numbers have not been disclosed, but it will certainly be somewhere between 3 to 5% of GDP. All right, that's interesting. But yeah, I don't see the breaking news of them signing it, but it wouldn't be surprising to me at all that that Trump basically took that statement that I gave you of Zelensky, where he didn't apologize. Trump wants the mineral deal because he wants deals. So here we have the deal, and now it'll all be reversed or whatever. It's just impossible because it's all driven by irrational whim. So hard to tell what happens when. You know, David, basically, it's an accounting reality, right? The dollars have to go somewhere. Think of now they could go into the mattress of the people who have the dollars, but they're not going to keep them in the mattress very long, and most of it won't go in the mattress. So it's the dollars have to go somewhere, and they either get used to buy stuff, or they get used to invest, and that creates the current. So you have to have a current account surplus. If you have a trade deficit, there has to be a current account surplus. By definition, again, by definition. But if they go into Canadian bank, the Canadian bank is going to do something with those dollars. They don't just sit as dollars in the Canadian bank. Somebody is going to take those dollars and use them for something. Again, it could be to buy oil from Saudi Arabia. It could be to invest in the U.S. It could be to buy stuff in the U.S. They don't just sit as U.S. dollars in a Canadian bank. The Canadian bank might go into the foreign exchange market and exchange them for Canadian dollars. All has the same effect ultimately. They can't earn interest because a Canadian bank can't lend out American dollars. To whom? For what? So it literally doesn't work out that way. Now, again, it's not that the equation works on a country-by-country basis. It works if you sum it up across all countries. The dollars get back to the United States. That's right. One way or the other, they get back to the United States, either counted as exports, that is people buying American stuff, or as investments. There's no other way for them to get back to the United States. That's how they get back to the United States. Now, some of them get back to the United States by people driving into the United States and buying stuff, but that's like exports. One way or the other, the dollars come back. All right, Hunter. My company creates billions of dollars by making it economical to produce oil from far geographic fringe of a major U.S. basin. We continually push the economic fringe further. Tariffs raise the breakeven and close the door. Yes. You know, there is a lot of what the U.S. is good at is at the margins, at the fringe, at where you need an extra technology, when you need an extra boost. And every time you raise costs, that eliminates the profit margin that these companies have. Oil in particular, the price of oil is not determined by the company. It's a highly competitive market. Highly competitive market. So, yes, tariffs, again, hurt in huge numbers of ways. Okay, David again. Americans consistently criticize Congress for being weak. But on the other hand, they vote them out of office when their members stand up against Trump. I know, but that's the insanity of the Republican Party these days, and that's the Trump zombie syndrome. Michael, if Trump doesn't reverse the tariffs, is there any pro-market policy he could take that would offset them? Are there any sectors of the economy you expect to have their controls loosened other than energy? Yeah, I mean, you just got lumber loosened. There might be others. I don't know. But yes, I mean, he could massively deregulate the U.S. economy. Again, he's not going to do it through laws, so it's not going to stick. He's deregulating crypto. The Justice Department basically is backing off all the cases against crypto companies, even those that are actually involve fraud, unfortunately. So there will be deregulations. So the tariffs is not going to be the economy is going to go into tailspin and we're all going to die, because other things are going to happen at the same time. Cutting government spending, real cuts, if it ever happens, actually are good for the U.S. economy. So they're going to be mitigating things. They're going to be, it's not all doom and gloom, but it's not good because it's unnecessary. It's really stupid. You could, if you just deregulated, the economy would do phenomenally well without the restraint. So it's just literally punching yourself on the face while you're trying to box, you know, again, what are the metaphors? No points in the metaphors, I don't think. Paul says, why hasn't the EU released 240 billion frozen Russian assets to Ukraine? What is stopping them now? I just think they're afraid. They're afraid of the precedent. They're afraid of antagonizing the Russians. They're afraid of what happens once this war. They're afraid of Trump. What happens if Trump forces Ukraine into a deal with Russia? And then how does the EU unfreeze these assets? What happens to all that? So fear is paralyzing them. They could tell Russia, yeah, we're never going to give you the money back. It's never coming back. You've cost us this. We're going to take your money and fund this war with your money. That's what they should do. But it takes courage to do that, and Europeans are not, these European governments are not particularly known for their courage. Oyvind, would you like to share your thoughts on equity funds? Have you considered or actually acted on removing risk in regards to your own holdings? Don't answer if the question is too personal. The political conditions are crazy. On equity funds, look, I am not a market timer. I don't go in and out of the market based on politics. If you look at history, good presidents, bad presidents, Republican presidents, Democratic presidents, generally markets have gone up, equity markets. So I'm not betting against the stock market. I hold a widely diversified equity portfolio, mostly in value stocks, quite a bit international, which has done well over the last few months as the U.S. market has not done well since the beginning of the year. International markets have done well. So I'm a big believer in diversify and forget about it. I don't watch the market. I don't watch my portfolio go up and down. I don't worry about losing, I don't know, yesterday 2% or whatever it is. I ignore it all. I don't even manage it. It's an automatic pilot. It rebalances every quarter. I pay somebody to do it. It's based on a diversification formula. And I just hope that value stocks do better over the long run. They should. You'd expect them to. They haven't done well in the past, in the recent past, which suggests that they should do, reversion to mean they should do better in the future. I don't change my investment portfolio based on politics. Now, I did invest in an Argentinian ETF last year, a little bit of money just to show support for Milei, and that was up 30-something% last year. But it was a small amount of money, so it doesn't really change my, wealth that much. Anyway, that's my view on investing. David says, a guy like Ben Shapiro must have made enough FU money that he can freely speak his mind. How to explain his Trump apologism? I don't know. I mean, he certainly has FU money, but he needs a career. I think it's that he wants to be popular. People want to be popular. Altruism drives you towards wanting to be popular. You want other people to like you. You want other people to support you. And it's not just his listeners. He's got a whole network, Michael Knowles and Walsh and all these other people, who are all Trump acolytes. He would break with them. His whole business that he has, everything he's built depends on him staying with Trump. That's the reality. So I think that Ben has sold his soul. He lacks the integrity and the commitment to integrity, the commitment to the virtue of integrity, to say what he really thinks, to really advocate. The only issue where I think he would split with Trump is if Trump really turned anti-Israel. It's the only thing I think where he would risk splitting, and that is because of his religiosity. But other than that, he just doesn't have values that are strong enough. He doesn't believe in freedom and capitalism and markets enough to be willing to risk his business to defend them. That's the way I see it. Whereas I'm trying to build my business based on those principles. Right? And I'm far from FU money. So one day we'll get there. Nevfeld, which one is a more sinful against reality? A man who never gets the maturity of differentiate business from the toys, or those who advocate for the philosophy of reality and think this man will make his country great? I think it's the second. I mean, the first, okay, they never matured, but I think somebody who sees it and it evades the consequence of seeing it, that is the worst. That is the worst. So in that sense, morally, rational people, who then blindly support Trump, that's bad. Optimus Prime, hello friends. I'd like to welcome you all to the Yaron Brook was right show. That happens every week. Every week. All right. Interesting. Okay. Colt. Conservatives in my family who voted Trump and skeptical of Zelensky, even they thought Zelensky was treated unfairly. Conservative media is spineless. Well, good for them, because it's not what I'm reading. I'm reading conservatives defending Trump no matter what. So I'm glad to see that at the grassroots level, yeah, people realize what happened there. Michael, do bullies know they need to be unpredictable and make people uncomfortable to maintain obedience from others? This seems to be Trump's tactic. Yeah, I think they do. I definitely think it's a strategy. There's an amazing scene in Schindler's List where the Nazi, he pulls out a sniper rifle from his office overlooking the camp with the Jews. And every now and then he pulls out the rifle and shoots somebody. And it's not clear who. I mean, nobody can predict who he will shoot, when he will shoot. And he knows, and he says it, I think, in the movie, the best way to control people is through lack of predictability. Once they know what the rules are, they can then follow them and they can figure it out and they can maintain some kind of semblance of a life. But when they don't know what the rules are, they don't know who's going to be shot, who's going to be killed, who's going to be done, what they can do, what they can't do, then, that is the most controlling. That is the most controlling. Yeah. So yes, I think whether they know it explicitly or not, they figure it out pretty early in their bully life. Esoteric dichotomy. Here you are, and I find myself increasingly alienated and disgusted by various views on the rise: isolationism, tariffs, autocracy, even monarchism. Scary. Yeah, we live in scary times. Hold on to the rational views you have and try to find people who share those views and surround yourself with good people. Don't give up. Don't give up on the rational views because everybody else is holding irrational ones. Paul says, I didn't watch the Oscars, but I saw the clip of De Niro shouting, F you, Trump, and receiving a standing ovation. Did you see it? What's your opinion? I did not. I'm sympathetic to the F you, Trump, but I'm not sympathetic probably to the reasons they're doing it, and I'm not sympathetic to what they would like to replace Trump with. So, yeah, I mean, I think that would be my, I'm not sympathetic to Hollywood's politics at all, even if I do agree with their hatred of Trump. Enric, the dream of the 1950s when the USA was the world's manufacturer. Yeah, they still want that. When we blew up the rest of the world and we were the only manufacturer in the world, couldn't survive, it couldn't last, and it didn't. And we actually today are much, much better off because we don't have manufacturing jobs. We have much, much better paying, much, much greater value adding, what are called service jobs. Design of chips. We don't produce them, but we design them. Software writing, design of products. Apple's a design shop. Yeah, I mean, all of that is much greater value. Much greater value. Iron Mirkat, I have a trade deficit with the supermarket. Yeah, I have a trade deficit with pretty much with restaurants. Huge trade deficit with restaurants. Iron Mirkat, it's not a trade war you're on. It's a special trade operation. I like that. It's a special trade operation. Yes. Well, I mean, I don't believe in trade wars. I don't like applying war to economics or to anything that does not involve tanks and shooting and actual violence. So there is no such thing as a trade war, really. Michael, meant to ask this last night, were the founding fathers 80% Aristotle, 20% Plato? I don't know how you do that kind of calculation. But yeah, they were certainly influenced by Plato through Christianity primarily, and they were influenced by Aristotle through the Enlightenment, but I don't know what percentage. They were mostly rational, Aristotle, but they held on to some mysticism, Plato. I don't know what the percentages would be. Ask Greg Salamiri on Monday when he comes in. Capitalist spy, he deserves to be important each. I don't know what that means, capitalist. Michael, would you have a problem shooting somebody, even if it was perfectly justified in self-defense? You think it would affect you psychologically? Not much. No, I don't think so. I mean, I think I would be nervous shooting. I find myself being a little nervous shooting at just a target, because I know the power of the gun and what it's capable of, and I worry about shooting the right person and all that. But no, I wouldn't have a problem killing somebody who was truly evil in self-defense. Michael, how would you grade Millet his first year in office? I don't know, B+, which is very high for me for a politician. A-, B+, something like that. He's done very well. Although now he's taken all his Zelensky pictures off of his Instagram page, and I've just lost a chunk of respect for Millet. So he's sucking up to Trump, which is very sad to see. Henry, hi, Yaron. For your upcoming talk in the UK at York University, I believe it is open to the public. How do we buy, if so? There was a website where you can buy tickets. So just Google Yaron Brook, York University, Morality of Capitalism, and hopefully it'll come up. And you can go to the website and buy tickets. I'll try to find the URL and advertise it. The URL will probably, if it's not on my website yet, yaronbrookshow.com, it will be in the next few weeks. So you will be able to get it through there. Thank you, Henry. I appreciate it. All right. I'm trying to think if I'm doing any other public talks. I will be in Scotland. It's at Andrews University for a public talk later this month at the very end of March. I think it's March 30th. I'm doing a seminar in London, if you're interested. Seminar in London, March 29th. It'll be £250, 4 hours probably, and it'll be on being a rational egoist, and I'll talk about love, relationships, sex, career, self-esteem, things like that. And it'll be very interactive, and you'll be able to ask them questions, and it'll be in the center of London on March 29th. I'll have more details soon. I'm hoping to finalize this tomorrow. And be able to, I'm hoping some of you are interested, some of you Brits are interested, hoping to get 10, 20 people most, but I'll even do it if they're under 10. So this will be in London on March 29th. Miroslav has now posted the event page for the event in York, and the tickets are £12, and you can buy them. Tickets for my March 29th still haven't gone on sale, but I hope you're interested. I hope there's enough people that are interested. I hope we can do it. I hope it should be fun. All right, everybody. Thank you. Really, really appreciate it. Don't forget to subscribe if you're not a subscriber. Don't forget to like the show before you leave. Please like the show. It helps the algorithm. Really, really does. And don't forget to support the show on Patreon or on PayPal. And thank you. And I'll see you all same time. Tomorrow actually won't be the same time. Tomorrow will be an evening show. So I'll see you tomorrow evening. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of